Okay, so you saw the title and you're screaming, clickbait, but no, I promise you we are going to be moving on from Sunshine and Moonlight because Artemis and Apollo is here, and it is better. Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joey's Retro Handhelds. I'm Joey, and today we're going to talk about why you should be using Artemis and Apollo to stream all of your favorite games from your computer to your favorite devices instead of Sunshine and Moonlight. So yeah, in today's definition of streaming, we are talking about local streaming, not remote streaming like Xbox xCloud. We're talking about local. So all of your games, everything are installed on your computer and you are streaming to your devices inside of your home, like the Odin 2 Portal, for example, or NVIDIA Shield if you have one of those, or really any other device. It could be a Windows handheld, it could be a Linux handheld, whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Either way, we are streaming games from our computer to our devices, and we're going to make it very easy. Now, a lot of you watched my previous setup guide on Sunshine and Moonlight, and I went very in-depth on different things that you need. For example, we talked about access points, we talked about Ethernet, we talked about how to get your network set up, then we talked about how to get everything set up for Sunshine and Moonlight, including dummy HDMI plugs, resolution scripts, monitor scripts, and there was a whole bunch more. I went really in-depth with that because I was using streaming quite a bit, and I wanted to share how my setup was, no matter how convoluted it was, because it would help other people. Now scrap all of that and imagine that one program has everything built in already, so you don't have to do any of that. We could turn that, I don't even remember, half-hour video into 10 minutes if we need to. That is today. So Sunshine, for those that aren't aware, is a program that you install on your PC, and it lets you connect remote devices for the purposes of streaming games from your PC to them. Moonlight is the application on the device that connects to Sunshine, and that would be your PC. So a lot of us use these two programs for playing games locally through streaming or even remotely on the go. And the main benefit is you get all of the benefits from your gaming computer. So imagine having an RTX 5080 inside of your gaming computer. You can max out any game you want, and then you're sending that to any device that you want, like the Odin 2 Portal. That is exactly the benefit of why everybody does this. So I can run around playing some God of War Ragnarok at 120 FPS with maxed out graphics, or Cyberpunk 2077, or Forza Horizon 5. It doesn't matter. Any game that I have on my PC, I can crank it all up to the max that my computer can handle it, and then send it out for streaming. So that's what Sunshine and Moonlight was. Let's talk about Apollo and Artemis now. Apollo is a fork of Sunshine, so basically replaces it, and the developer wanted to make some changes to Sunshine. They didn't want those changes, so he said, screw it, I'm gonna make my own. Love him for that, because this is the best type of content, the revenge content. The biggest changes to Apollo from Sunshine is the addition of virtual displays for each device that you connect. And not just creating those virtual displays, but having them match your device's resolution and frame rate. And it doesn't affect your existing monitors that you have on your computer. This means you no longer need a dummy HDMI plug. And having to do all of that setup to change the resolution and frame rate of your monitors to match your device is no longer needed. It is all automatic. Apollo generates a virtual display for any and every new device that you connect to it, so you can customize on a per device basis, but it's all done automatically. Now, if you're new to streaming, you might be wondering, well, why does that matter? And the answer is you want your monitor that you're streaming from, or your computer, to match your device's display. Otherwise, you run into a lot of issues with jittering and input lag and stuttering and all that sort of thing. So if you had a monitor that was ultra widescreen and you were streaming to an Odin 2 Portal and it is a 1080p panel and it's normal, you're going to get a whole wide panel. However, Apollo adjusts that monitor that it creates for the Odin 2 Portal to look exactly like an Odin 2 Portal. That is the big benefit there. It matches it exactly with the hertz, the refresh rate, everything. And that makes it so much better for streaming because you no longer have to fool around with all those settings to get it perfect. It's all perfect out of the box. We previously needed to use a dummy HDMI plug to create a whole separate monitor that would match whatever device you were streaming to. And that was a bit of a disaster because if you had multiple devices with different resolutions and frame rates, it would suck. Don't need that no more. It's all over. Now, Apollo goes even further because one of the other benefits that was an issue with Moonlight and Sunshine, if you have multiple monitors, you needed a special script to get it all to work. And what I mean by that is to get them to turn off while you were streaming, it was an exceptional hassle. Never could get it working properly with my setup, no matter what scripts I used. Some of them worked for some bits and some of them didn't. Every single time it was like you would try and go back to your computer and everything was all messed up. Thankfully, Apollo has all of that fixed. All of my monitors shut off properly and they turn back on whenever I'm done. It is awesome and it's just another benefit to Apollo. Okay, so let's just make a long story short here. We are uninstalling Sunshine and sometimes Moonlight. We'll talk about that. We're going to replace them both with Apollo and Artemis. So let's do it. Okay, so the first step is something that I have already done, but you need to uninstall Sunshine from your computer and any scripts that you're using, revert them and all that sort of thing. I imagine if you've installed Sunshine at this point, you would understand and know how to uninstall it, just control panel, uninstall, but run through, make sure that that's uninstalled. Any other programs that it installed is uninstalled. If it asks you to uninstall stuff, yes, you do. You want to basically start with a blank slate to not affect anything that's going to screw up Apollo. Then let's go ahead and grab the latest release from the Apollo GitHub. As of recording, it is 0.2.7, but just grab whatever the latest release is. Open the exe that you downloaded and move through the setup. You don't need to change anything, just keep pushing next and install. Once that's all done, you can open Apollo from your start menu. You might get a warning if you're using Firefox, but just go ahead and accept. You access Apollo through your web browser. It's the exact same thing as Sunshine. Let's go ahead and create a username and password to access Apollo, and then you can log in with that information. Okay, so this here is the home screen of Apollo, which looks exactly like Sunshine. So anybody who's used this already should understand a lot of it basically off the start. But it should be pretty simple for new users too. We'll go over it. Remember before how we talked about Moonlight being the program that you install on your devices to connect to your PC? Well, currently on Android, Artemis is the replacement for Moonlight. So you want to be using that for any Android devices that you have. However, for both iOS and Windows, you're going to have to use Moonlight as of right now until Artemis comes out on iOS and Windows. Don't worry, everything still works out with Moonlight. It's just Artemis is better, and whenever that comes out, you'll want to replace it. So Android users, go ahead and grab Artemis and throw it on your Android device if that's what you're using. Install it, and we'll configure it in a little bit. Otherwise, if you're not using an Android device and you're following this guide, go ahead and grab Moonlight and install that. I'll leave a link in the description to Moonlight if you need it. Let's head over to the Applications tab, and by default, you have Desktop and Steam Big Picture available to you. You might not have Steam Big Picture if you don't have Steam installed, but at this point, I would assume anybody has Steam installed on their PC if they're watching this, so you should have it. Now, a lot of you, and myself personally, use a front end called Play Night when I'm streaming, or maybe you use Launchbox, or maybe you use something else. And I'm going to link a guide to Play Night in the description. But this is an optional step. If you're used to using Steam Big Picture for all of your games, then you can use that on your PC and it'll be fine. But if you use a different front end like Play Night, let me show you how to add it so we can easily access it from Artemis and Moonlight. Go ahead and click Add New, and then my application is Play Night. Scroll down and under Detached Commands, click Add. At this point, you want to navigate to where your either Launchbox or Play Night or whatever folder is, and you want to put the exe path in here. So I'm going to go right-click the full screen Play Night exe, copy as path, and I'm going to paste it into that Detached Commands. You have to make sure that it has the double quotes, so just keep those in there. Scroll down and you want to check Always Use Virtual Display for this. If you don't, it won't, and we want to use that because it's the entire point of Apollo. Make sure to save at the bottom. Move on ahead and you want to go back into Desktop and Steam Big Picture, and you want to enable Always Use Virtual Display for those as well. Don't forget this step. You want to enable that for any new application that you add. Now, I should point out that these same steps for adding Play Night or Launchbox works for any game that you want to add as well. So let's say your game isn't on Steam and you're not using a front end and you just want to add one single game to easily get into from Moonlight and Artemis. You can add it here, add the exe, check that little checkbox for always use virtual display, and it'll show up in Artemis and Moonlight, and it'll be an easy way for you to launch right into that game. Personally, I actually just use a front end, and it's simpler because I can launch any game that I want, but you have the option. At this point, let's go ahead and connect our very first device. For me, that's going to be the Odin 2 portal. So let's go ahead and open Artemis, and if you didn't install it from before, go ahead and do so now and then open it. First thing you see is your PC name. Mine is Joey PC, of course. And this should all be familiar with you if you've set up Sunshine before, but you want to tap the PC and you're going to get a PIN number. And you likely just got a pop-up on your PC asking you to confirm it. Now you can click that pop-up if you're quick enough, or just head to Apollo again and you want to go to the PIN tab, and then you can enter that PIN to connect the device to Apollo. Make sure that you select the PIN pairing tab and you want to give the device a name, so Odin 2 Portal. It'll make things easier, trust me. Now, if you check your Android device, you're going to see desktop, you're going to see Steam, and you should see virtual desktop. And if you added Play Night like I did, you'll see that there too. We'll come back to this. Let's go back to Apollo for now. On this same pin page, go ahead and click the pencil icon, and you're going to see the permissions that this device has access to. The very first device that you connect to Apollo gets full permissions, and that's fine. We want that. Now, on my LIX, all I did was install Moonlight, and then I opened it, and I tapped the PC to complete the pairing. But now look at the permissions. It is missing some. This is important. For any device after the first device, remember to come back here, and you want to give it all of the permissions. Honestly, it's just simple enough to do them all. Don't forget to click the green check mark to save everything that you did. Otherwise, all of these permissions aren't going to save. Now, at this point, let's head back to the Android device, and we're going to move back a screen, and you want to click the settings cog. You can also do this if you're using Moonlight right now on an x86 device. It doesn't have to be Android, but some of the options in Artemis are going to be a little bit different than Moonlight, but we'll go over them now. So my Odin 2 portal is a 1080p 120Hz panel. So I'm going to select both of those for the resolution and the frame rate. You want to match these to any device you have. So if you have a device that maybe has a 1440p panel and 60 Hz, you want to match that. Just match it to whatever you have. Then I'm personally bumping my bitrate up, and this is going to be person to person dependent. I can sometimes go up to 300 megabytes per second, and it's usually fine. But for you likely can't. It depends on your network setup, and I don't mean internet. Really doesn't matter what your internet is. If you get 10 megabytes per second from your internet company, does not matter. What this matters is your internal network. How far is your router from where you're playing? If you have an access point, how far is it from where you're playing? If you're not connected to Ethernet, all of that sort of thing. Your Wi-Fi range inside of your house. How much are you getting from your device to your actual router or access point? That is the part that matters here. So what I would suggest is for you to just bump this up in 25 megabytes per second increments until you find that it's stable or it gets unstable. And you're going to know it's unstable because you'll try and play a game and it's going to say that your speed isn't fast enough. And then you can just bump it down until you get a perfect compatibility for playing games. Now, my previous video went very in-depth on different options for access points as well as network setup and all that sort of thing. If maybe you don't have the best network and you're wondering how you could get the best network, so I'll leave a link in the description to at least for you to check out that part of the video because it is still relevant. Scroll all the way down, and the only other option that I would suggest is show performance stats. Just for the beginning, while you start streaming, it's good to have this on so you can see how everything's going. But you can feel free to turn this off later. Head back, and we want to go into the PC, and now go ahead and click desktop. Now I'm using OBS to capture footage, and what you're seeing is my Odin 2 portal screen right now, which is showing my PC's desktop. This is all correct, and it is working perfectly. So go ahead and jump on your actual computer, and go to display settings, and you can now see the new added virtual display. It should be the extra one if you count the number of monitors you have, and then the last one. So it's a virtual one. scroll to advanced display, and you can confirm that, hey, yeah, this is 1080p, 120 Hz, and it even says Odin 2 Portal, or whatever device you're using. This is extremely awesome. You can also move your mouse cursor all the way over to your device because, again, it is like a new monitor. So you can just move it around there and yeah, it's a new monitor. Now, at this point, all of your monitors are on. Nothing is turned off, and I promised you that they could turn off. So let's do that. Open those display settings again. On my setup, monitor 4 is my device. So we're going to disconnect each of the other monitors. Click Identify so you can identify which monitor is which. And you want to know which one is your device's monitor because that's the one you don't want to disconnect. Select each of the other monitors that you have, or maybe you just have one, and go to Disconnect Display and save changes. When you're all done, you should be left with only one single monitor, and that is your device's one. And that should still be on, but all of your monitors are off. Now, feel free to exit out of Artemis. If you're on a handheld, do the combination of L1, R1, Start and Select, all at the same time, or just simply swipe up and select the back arrow. Go ahead and tap Desktop and choose Quit Session. All of your monitors should show right back up. Now for fun, click Desktop again. All of your monitors just turned off, but your device is still working perfectly. That is perfection. It is literal perfection, and it always works this way. I've done this. I sat there just turning this off and on just to see if it would break, and it never did. Now, you do have to repeat these steps for every new device that you connect, for the very first time. So I have to do this all over again with my Ally X, but once you do it on your new device, it remembers it forever, so you don't have to worry about keep doing it. The basic idea is it remembers your changes that you make while connected, but it should take you maybe under a minute to do these types of changes for any new device that you add. And it's very simple because you could just use your desktop's mouse and keyboard to move all the way over to that monitor, make those changes, and then off you go. Now, one little tip, if you're using an Odin 2 or a Retroid or any other device that has the option to swap to Xbox controls, you'll want to do that before you start and open Artemis. So it's easy on both the Retroid and the Odin 2s. You just swipe down, choose the little toggle to Xbox, and then open Artemis afterwards. Okay, so now if you're curious what my actual setup looks like, I personally use Wake On LAN to wake my PC up, and you can do that through Artemis or Moonlight. And then I use Play Night, like I mentioned before. So I just choose Play Night, and it opens it, and I can scroll to any game that I want, and then I click it and play. When I'm done for the day, I exit out of the game, choose Play Night, and I use the combo hotkey of L1, R1, Start and Select to exit, and then I tap Play Night and choose Quit Session. Pretty simple. And once again, all of this works the exact same on devices that are currently running Moonlight as well. So you don't exactly need Artemis right now, although you do want to swap to it when it becomes available for your device. So my Ally X, for example, steps are all of the exact same. Disconnecting displays and so on, the virtual display all works. And so I imagine those of you with a Steam Deck or a Linux handheld and all of that, it'll work the exact same too. Now back to Wake On LAN for a second. And unfortunately, this part of the guide I can't really show you, or I can't really show you because it's different for everybody's motherboard, it's different for everybody's computer. The best way that I found is to Google your motherboard's model number and Wake On LAN, and then usually you can find the manual or video on how to do it for everybody's specific model. So for example, I have the MSI Pro Z690A motherboard, and my first result was an awesome Reddit post, and so I went through that. But also in Windows, you'll want to head over to the device manager, your network card, and you want to enable allow this device to wake this computer. You also need to turn off fast startup in the power options because I found that to be an issue too. Wake On LAN can be a little bit finicky sometimes depending on your setup. I've had computers in the past where it just didn't work sometimes, and then I've had computers like the one I have now where it works every single time. So just be aware. It is a little bit finicky sometimes. You just have to find the right way to set it up. But it's super useful to try because you don't want to have to walk over to your computer every time you want to start streaming. You want to just be able to click it in Moonlight or Artemis to wake that PC up and start playing. I think the speed at which all of this works, how consistent it is with everything, is why Sunshine and Moonlight are just dead at this point. There is zero reason to continue using either of them anymore. Apollo and Artemis are just better, and it feels like a natural progression for you to just jump to. Let me know in the comments any tips or tricks that maybe you found with your setup. I am not the expert in any way, shape, or form. I've just used this for a long time and I know how to set it up and how to play with it in my setup. But I'm sure you probably have some tips and tricks on how to do things too. So put that in the comments. I'll pin anything that I see, and hopefully that helps out anybody else that's trying to do this. Come join me on the Discord to talk all about handhelds and streaming. Support me on Patreon if guides like this are helping you. That's all I have for today, so thank you all for watching and hope you all have a good one.